Chapter 15. We only had 2 PPB pistols. I pointed mine towards one end of the corridor. Tamret grabbed the gun out of Volonic's hand and covered the other end. She looked determined and ready for anything. But with limited weapons and no upgrades, we were firmly on last stand territory here. They'd found us, and they were coming for us, and there was no way that the top research facility in the Phatic Empire wasn't going to be able to handle a few lightly armed runaways. I tried firing a pistol at the wall. Who knows, I thought, maybe it would open into a convenient garbage chute. No luck. The wall absorbed the blast harmlessly. I returned to standing ready. Maybe they were going to get us, but I vowed to make it as difficult for them as possible. Then, an orange gas began to waft up from the floor. It smelled like burned plastic and rotted meat. I turned to look at Tamret, but her eyes were already growing heavy. In an instant, she slumped to the floor, along with everyone else except for Volonic and I. I didn't feel anything at all from the gas. I had to assume they treated the prisoners with something to make them react, so that they could deploy the gas without affecting their own people. For a second, I considered pretending to be affected, but wasn't sure what that would get me. Mostly, it would be a form of passive surrender, and I wasn't quite ready to go down that path yet. The guards began pouring in from both sides now, heavily armed, with big PPB weapons, like futuristic shotguns, aimed at us. Volonic's hands shot up in surrender, but I wasn't about to give up. I took aim at the first guard. It turned out a trained Phatic soldier is a quicker draw than I am. Though it may be hard to believe, after all my adventures in space, this was my first experience with being stunned. I didn't enjoy it. When I came to, I had no recollection of being hit by the blast that took me down. But now I felt stiff and nauseated. My head pounded and my fingers and toes tingled. I found myself not in a cell, but in a lab. My wrists and ankles were bound with plasma restraints to the oversized chair, no doubt designed with fads in mind. I could hear someone moving equipment around, rearranging things made of metal or glass. The footsteps sounded light and graceful. I kept straining my neck to see behind me, but I couldn't get a look. Finally, I heard a voice, and I wished for silence again. It was Ardov. "I don't think I've ever seen you go this long without speaking," he said. "Does it hurt you not to talk nonsense?" This was not a situation I wanted to be in. Ardov had total power over me. We were on his turf, and he had every advantage. Somehow I didn't think cracking wise was going to get me very far. "Hey, Ardov, you sure get around, don't you?" He smirked his evil cat smirk. "I figured it was only a matter of time until you showed up here, looking for your friends. And now we're all reunited. Kind of nice, actually." "So, it's one thing to be working for Junip, who has taken you under his wing and all, but now you can't even pretend you're not one of the bad guys. Doesn't that bother you?" "There are no good and bad sides, Zeke. There are just the powerful and the powerless, and I'm siding with the powerful. That's what I've always done." "And you've always lost," I said, which maybe kind of tells you something. "There is an old saying from my city-state," Ardov said. "Declare no battle won until the war is over." "So all those times I handed you your butt were just strategic withdrawals?" "Temporary setbacks, necessary steps to get where we are today. I have the upper hand, and you are utterly defeated, like the powerless weakling you are." "I'm still not clear on why it's taken so many strategic withdrawals and setbacks to get the upper hand on a powerless weakling," I said. "Can you walk me through that part?" "You aren't going to be laughing soon." "I'm not laughing now, actually. Mostly, I'm really nervous. I don't have a problem admitting that. It's the way I tend to feel when I'm tied to a chair in an experimental lab with a wacko speechifying in my general direction. But here's the thing, Ardov. You don't have to be that wacko. You don't have to be the bad guy. All the things you've done, the beings you've hurt, you can put that behind you. Untie me. Help me get the others out of here, and it can be a whole new life for you. Doesn't that seem more satisfying? Helping beings instead of hurting them? Wouldn't you rather work for the good of the many instead of the power of the few? He smiled at me, a pitying sort of smile, and I knew that there really was nothing there to save. Maybe he had a sad story, a childhood trauma or cruel parent. Maybe Ardov had endured terrible things and was now broken. Maybe he'd been seduced by the dark side, by Darth Junip, and had been brainwashed beyond redemption, but it didn't matter. I knew I could never reach him. Unfortunately, this realization didn't get me anything because I was still tied to a chair in an experimental lab. I guessed that when Ardov started torturing me. I could take comfort in the knowledge that there wasn't much I could have done to prevent it, but there really was not all that much comfort to be had from that. Then, from behind me, I heard the door hiss open.
"You're not supposed to be in here,"
a female voice said. I didn't know that, Ardov said.
"I find that unlikely," the voice answered. "You are dissembling. If you wish to serve the Phatic Empire, you must never dissemble."
"Yes, of course. You are right."
"Your rivalry with this being does not further the Empress's cause. Go purge yourself of these feelings."
"Yes," Ardov said. "Right away." I heard him step towards the door and exit the lab. So now I was alone with a being who frightened Ardov. Things just kept getting better and better. I heard her approach from behind and come around to the front of my chair. It was a female fad wearing a turquoise lab coat. She had thick hair pulled back into a long braid, and she wore big silver rings on almost all her fingers. I'd never seen a fad with jewelry before. She placed her hands on her hips and jutted out her lower jaw slightly.
"You're awake at last,"
she said with an unexpected amount of cheer.
"I'm so excited."
I tried not to think too much about what she might be excited about. Any being who worked here was probably a big fan of torture. I was part of a group that had killed 2 of their guards. There was no way they were going to go easy on me.
"If I take off your restraints," she said, "do you promise not to run away?"
"I pinky swear," I assured her. If I had the chance to take it, I would be going away. She could drag me to Pinky Court later.
"You've been treated with nanites to make you susceptible to the control gas," she said. "So if you do run, you'll be quite easy to stop this time. But you won't want to run because I'm your friend. You know I'm your friend, don't you?"
"It sure is looking that way," I agreed. "Can I ask you who you are?" The fad smiled.
"I am Investigator Cosnerian Is, and I am so excited to finally meet you."
"This is a big day for me, too." Investigator Cosnerian Is pressed a button, and the restraints vanished. I began to rub one wrist with the opposite hand while my captor watched me with the delight people on Earth reserved for internet cat videos.
"My superiors haven't yet figured out who you are," she said. "If they had, they wouldn't have let me have you. I suspect your friend Ardov might inform them if he decides it will be to his advantage, so I'll have to be quick."
"Okay," I said cautiously. "What is it we need to do?" Investigator Cosnerian Is came over and crouched by me, putting her tusked face uncomfortably close to mine.
"I'm a great admirer of yours," she said.
She sounded giddy.
"Seek?"
She said my name quiet, like it was a secret, and then she giggled. A giggling fan is not something you see every day. Still, I'd been meeting a lot of different kinds of fads lately. "Are you with the Renegades?" I asked.
"Oh, no,"
Investor Cosnerian Is said, keeping her face uncomfortably close. I guess this sort of proximity had some meaning in her culture. All I knew for sure was that it made me squirm.
"I've heard of them. Traitors to the Empress. I don't have the time for such silly things. I'm not political. I'm in it for the science. I love science, don't you?
Science, I assured her, is super great.
It is.
She assured me with a creepy look in her eye.
Super and great.
Okay, so this fad was not looking to destroy the Renegades with a sweep of her mighty arm. That was good. She was, however, extra weird. Hey, I attempted. You seem like a really nice being. I'd love to introduce you to my friends. Do you think you could get them out of their cells? She brightened at this.
Your friends, including the rural girl, yes? The whole galaxy knows about you, too. It's the great romance of our age.
We've held hands a few times, I said. Anyhow, I think she's done with me.
No,
gasped Investigator Cosmarian Is, putting a hand to her tusked mouth.
What did you do to her?
Why exactly is it my fault? I demanded. She just suddenly started giving me the cold shoulder. How am I supposed to be to blame?
You must be, because she is so devoted to you,
Investigator Cosmarian Is said, scrunching up her face judgmentally.
Anyone can see that.
Yeah, well, things have changed. Now she's into getting as far away from me as possible.
You know, young ladies are complicated beings,
Investigator Cosmarian Is began. Look, I appreciate the advice and all, but do you have any thoughts on how I could get out of here? Maybe bring Tamret and the rest of my friends with me?
I do,
she said.
That's what we're here to discuss.
That was easier than I thought. Just so I understand, if you think the beings who are working against the Empress are silly, why do you want to help me?
I've followed your exploits,
she said,
and I want to see what you can do. You are my special experiment, Zeke, and the universe itself is my lab. How do you like that?
I love it, I said, because I think you're out of your mind and you're totally freaking me out, while honest might not have gotten me the results I wanted. Investigator Cosmarian Is clapped her hands together several times rapidly.
I'm so glad. Now, I've made great progress with this ancient technology. I have a prototype, you know. Prototypes are so much fun to play with. They are full of promise. If things go well, I should be able to deploy it in a matter of a few months. We would never have gotten so far if not for you. Your blood sample made it all possible, Zeke. Won't that make you happy, being responsible for such big changes across the galaxy?
I'm already a pretty happy person, I said, having no idea what she was talking about. I suspected she wasn't really listening to me anyhow.
I searched you, you know,
she told me, her expression sly.
While you were unconscious. I looked through your things, checked your pockets. What kind of person walks around with a stun grenade?
Just when you think the creepy factor can't go any higher, life defies your expectations. That was a very reasonable thing to do, I assured her.
I see you found the powder.
Was I in trouble? If I tried to act innocent and asked what powder, she might get angry or be disappointed. For whatever reason, this freaky fad scientist had decided she liked me for being me. So I decided to take a gamble on being honest. I thought it might help me get my abilities back, I said. But I wasn't sure what to do with it. I was afraid if I used it wrong, it might kill me.
As it turns out, if you use it right, it might kill you. Oh, yes, it might indeed.
She nodded rapidly.
Do you know what the chances of it killing you are?
I shook my head.
It is very simple to take the powder. Just put a few grains on your tongue. The dose is actually not terribly important. It's almost impossible to take too little, and you can't take too much. Once you ingest the powder, it works instantly. You will then have a 15% chance of dying. Do you know another way to express the number 15, Zeke? 3 out of 20. You have 17 chances to find chances out of 20 to survive. But this is former technology, so it's not that simple. You'll still have access to the abilities, but the powder will kill you in a few hours if you don't immediately check to see if you will survive.
What do you mean, check to see?
The powder, the nanites, they are both designed with quantum entanglements, and this is the object with which they are entangled.
She opened her grayish hand and showed me a black, 20-sided die, which she dropped into my hand. Anyone who has ever played a tabletop role-playing game would recognize the object. This one was heavy, made out of stone or possibly even alien metal.
You put a few grains of the powder on your tongue,
She said.
and then you roll the die. If you get a 4 or higher, you live. If you get a 3 or lower, your body will shut down when the benefits of the powder have worn off.
There's a saving throw? I asked. That's what you're telling me? This was a classic tabletop RPG move. Let's say your character was zapped with a sleeping spell that has a 30% chance of working. You roll a 6-sided die. If you get a 3 or higher, they're safe. Different percentages require different dice, which is why there's also dice with 4, 8, 12, and 20 sides. Why would this stuff be designed this way? I asked.
Who knows?
She answered.
The formers are mysterious. Perhaps this was just second nature to them, pure logic to their minds. Some think they took pleasure from creating tricky rules and forcing lesser beings like ourselves to follow them. I don't know why, but that's how the system works. So keep the die and the powder. You will want both.
Couldn't I manipulate the throw? I asked. Like, maybe load the die?
The die will automatically calculate what the correct outcome would have been had you not interfered, and that number will be the one that drives the outcome, even if you don't know it. Believe me, we experimented on many subjects. I know it to be true.
And how long will the effects last?
Approximately 1/8 of a day. Confederation standard, that is. I have used a frame of reference for your convenience because I am a kind being.
That was a little over 3 hours. Plenty of time to get us out of here. Okay, fine. Then what happens now? Are you really just going to let me power up and go save my friends?
If you have the courage to risk death and use the powder, then yes. I will observe and take notes. I will then post about it on my blog. Anonymously, of course, otherwise I would be arrested for treason, but that's silly, as my first loyalty has always been to knowledge.
Isn't there some way to turn the nanites back on without risking death?
A method like that wouldn't much interest me,
She said.
I did just graduate schoolwork in quantum entanglement, so you can see why I'm so excited.
Sure, I said. But is it possible?
I don't think so,
She said. This wasn't true. The lie-detecting software that convex icosahedron had given me buzzed softly against my wrist. Come on, I said gently. You can tell me the truth.
Fine,
She said.
I probably could work something up if I wanted to, but it would take weeks, maybe even months. If you want to get out now, this is your only choice.
No buzz from my wrist, so Investigator Cosnarian was telling the truth.
Let's deal with reality as we find it, shall we?
She proposed, placing a finger on her chin as though posing for a photograph entitled Thoughtful Fad.
In just a few seconds, I'm going to alert the guards to who you are, and let them know you've escaped. If they recapture you, you will be treated much more harshly than you were the first time, and I will not be able to meet you again. I'm afraid that if you hope to remain free and liberate your friends, you have but one chance to succeed.
I was going to have to roll the die. Literally. I tentatively unscrewed the vial and put a few grains on my tongue. It tasted like nothing, but I knew the clock was now ticking. I was, as of this second, doomed to death unless I pulled off a saving throw. I couldn't remember how many times I'd done this with friends, goofing around as I cast game dice. I wasn't goofing around now, though. I took the die in my hand and let it drop to the table. As I did so, something snapped into my head, and I suddenly recalled that in math class I'd once learned the geometric name of a 20-sided die. It was a convex icosahedron.